Alone, every night alone. Why am I alone when I know that you brought me through? Am I wrong? Tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me I deserve all the pain that I put you through, love.
Year 3 of no sex. It's like, no, this is year 3 of my purity journey and everything that I learned during this time. And so, Jesus, whew, I'm telling you, I think like the first 3 or 4 years of my purity journey have been very, very hard. Okay. Oh my God, I don't wish it on nobody. Sis went through the fire. Jesus was with me, but my goodness. So I wasn't having sex. I wasn't dating nobody. I was definitely still very much heartbroken over the guy that I thought was my husband and turned out not to be my husband. And it was the year where I was introduced to covenants and altars, or at least the knowledge about covenants and altars. I had been following Prophetess Tiffany Montgomery, and she had Minister Kevin Ewing on one of her lives. And baby, when I tell you, it was powerful. I may have to link the live in my description for this one because it was absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Everybody should watch it at least 100 times. So, no, seriously, because with the delusion that I got myself into regarding the man that I thought was my husband, what started it was a zodiac reading. Okay, I ain't gonna get too much into it, but one thing I will say is that just because it seems like it's accurate, if it didn't come from God, do not come into agreement with any of those things at all. Zodiac readings, astrology, crystals, palm readings, tarot cards. Do not come into agreement with those things because they are literally portals to the demonic world. It did not come from God. I don't care how accurate the information is. It did not come from God. It is a familiar spirit. It is a portal. It is an open door for the enemy to bring in all his little demon friends into your life and steal, kill, and destroy your destiny. Do not do it. I realized in my first year of not having sex and trying to pursue the Lord that even though the enemy was pissed off at me, that I made a decision to, take a break from, giving my body to these men. He was like, oh no, I need the cycle to keep going. And so what does he do? He plays on the very thing that we're insecure about, that we're enslaved to. And he was like, well, men is her weakness. So in order for her to stay in this cycle so she doesn't birth the next generation, let me bring this zodiac sign, making her believe that such and such is her husband. And so no sex, no nothing, no masturbation, still learning to come out of agreement with my dreams, but still didn't have much revelation on that. Wasn't doing none of that. But baby, mentally, I was in delusion. Okay? And it's one thing to know the truth. Like deep down in my spirit, I knew that this man was my husband. But because of the soul tie that I had with this person, the covenant that I made with this person, I knew the truth, but I didn't want to accept the truth, right? And the covenant that I made with the zodiac sign was initiated by me paying for the reading. I don't think I've told anybody that. Ooh. I paid for a reading because I was desperate, and I remember so loud and clearly, this is before I became somewhat confident in hearing the voice of the Lord for myself, I remember God telling me, he was like, Deziray, why didn't you just ask me if this man was your husband? Why do you have to pay your hard-earning money to get a sign or a reading from an old lady who doesn't even know your name? They didn't create you. Why would you do that? Why didn't you just ask me? I was like, well, shoot. Now, I didn't know the depths or the repercussions of me paying for that. I thought it was like, okay, this stuff didn't come to pass. None of the stuff that I read, it didn't come to pass. And so I just kind of deleted and went on my merry way. But the spiritual repercussions, the covenant had been reenacted because of that. And so I can't just say, oh, I'm going to delete the reading and just move on. No, 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 no. After watching that live with Kevin Ewing, I realized that I still needed to come out of agreement with some stuff. More stuff than that, but that was highlighted to me in this point in my purity journey. I was like, oh my God, I am still spiritually bound to it. And so I did, the spiritual protocol, renounced, denounced, came out of agreement with it. I believe I was trying to, pray and fast, do all the things, but it just, child, I'm telling you, you still have to receive the truth. You can go through all those things, but if you don't allow your heart to receive the truth of God, the real word of God, that is sharper than a two-edged sword, it's just not going to hit different. And it didn't for a while. And during this time, I knew my friends were trying to get to me and they were praying. God bless their hearts, because they was probably like, girl, she is hard-headed. But it took one person to really, that I had the grace to hear the truth from, to really tell me like, Deziray, this ain't it. This is not it. This is not what the Lord asked for you. And that's when the covenant really broke. But it took a lot of toiling and a lot of prayer. One thing I've learned also in this season of my life is that you just won't get on the other side of freedom unless you address the truth regarding how you feel. Now, obviously, like, I wasn't as upfront about how I felt during this time as I could have been, because I probably would have healed from that whole thing sooner. But I was still trying to, do things by myself, isolating myself from people who were called to love me, and it didn't work. I realized that the enemy uses isolation so he can speak to us louder, or get us to think that the enemy is speaking louder than God is. In all actuality, the Lord is still speaking, but who have we submitted our heart and our ear to? And in that period of isolation, because mind you, I'm still living in Detroit, Michigan at this time, that wasn't good for me to isolate myself. I was already living alone. I didn't have a car. Sis was very broke, or not broke. I was in between blessings. My bad. I was facing eviction during this time. Like, sis was going through it. I couldn't pay my phone bill. And because I didn't have the money to pay my phone bill, my phone was off for a good period of time. And all my plans that I thought I was going to have within the military, going to Germany and all that stuff, baby, that was all because I wanted to chase a fantasy that never existed. God never wanted me to go in the military in Germany during that time. He never wanted me to go active duty during that time. I wanted that because it made sense to me. And when those doors were closed and I was still facing poverty and having to come out of agreement with these covenants and facing the reality that I was heartbroken, that, I'm telling you, that was the hardest season of my life. That was the hardest season of my life still. But what I've learned about Jehovah Jireh. Like, God came through for me for my rent. Okay? God provided for me in ways that I didn't even know was possible. Like, I'm talking about credit score going down. I'm still in the military, but I'm not making no money. Bank account in the negatives. I wasn't traveling as much either. My God. But he made sure that I had what I needed. I was on food stamps, okay? I was like, okay. When you on food stamps, you become a private chef every day. Listen, don't sleep on them food stamps. I don't speak against nobody who's in that season of their life. I've been through it, okay? But I've learned that when it comes to trusting in God, you really have to apply the word of God in your life, regardless of what you see. And because I was facing poverty in my mind and poverty, obviously, in my finances, I had to speak the word of God over my situation like my life depended on it, because it did. I remember I had to close the blinds in my room because it was to the point where the enemy was really messing with me. There were other tenants in the same apartment complex that I was in who were getting evicted, and I would see that outside of my window. And I remember looking at it, watching the whoever was moving that person out, that they were literally throwing this person's stuff out of the window and putting it in the trash. And I remember watching it. I was like, oh my God, what if they do that to me? And God was like, Deziray, I told you I got you. Don't cave into the enemy's devices. Close your window. Don't answer a whole lot of phone calls. And I need you to get in my word. I need you to look up every word that you can think of regarding your finances, regarding the blessings of the Lord, and I need you to put that on your wall. I literally wrote out scriptures on note cards, post them on my wall, and I just spoke the word of God over my life for months. Whenever I would get discouraged by a phone call saying that they gonna evict me, or I got another court date, for months reading the word of God over my life, until it really built up some faith stamina on the inside of me. That's when I learned to really apply the word of God in my life. I really did. And then, obviously, finally, I was able to accept the truth regarding the guy that I thought was my husband. Because, and the only reason why I did that was because the Lord told me that if I didn't surrender that whole situation, I wasn't going to move on. He wasn't going to be able to give me what he had for me, which was obviously better, and this was actually the year, I think, when was it? Yeah. So September 2022 is when I moved out of my apartment and moved into my parents' home. But before I did that, he specifically told me, he said, Deziray, you have to surrender. Just like he was telling, what's his name? Not Solomon. I forgot his name. But whoever that man was who anointed King David, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's just not coming to me. He told him, he was like, listen, you mourned over Saul long enough. It's time to anoint a new king. Okay? And so God was telling me, Desiree, it's time to move on. Your time in this apartment is coming to a close, and you're still grieving over this man. I've given you long enough to grieve. You need to let it go. And y'all ever had that hard, grieving, ugly cry? I don't think I ever released an ugly cry like that in my life. But I did before I moved out. And baby, I was free ever since. Okay? But it was hard because it's like, God, I don't want to go through the emotions. Like ripping or coming out of a covenant with that it is a spiritual death in a sense, you know, and I didn't want to go through with it. But praise be to God that he delivered me from that, and he sent me people that I was able to hear the truth from in order for me to be delivered from that. So that was year 3 of my purity journey. Still learning, still thriving. Yeah, that was very hard.